everyone to the First Podcast. We're doing the podcast. We're compelled to do the podcast in English today because we have our very special guest for this podcast. We have the senior writer of the Real Champs and Blanco Talks, Mr. Nithanth Ravindran, with us. Hello, Nithanth.
Yeah, hello. How are you?
Yeah, we're fine. And how's everything there?
Everything's good here. Uh, as good as it can be.
Yeah, so today we're planning to preview the La Liga, which is starting on June 12th. And since La Liga has always been a conversation about the two big teams and maybe a third one, so I think we should start with the big teams first. And we'll start with Real Madrid, and we have two Real Madrid fans in our panel here. So I think we should start with them. So you guys, what do you think about Real's overall performance this season, even after the quite a busy transfer window? Like how is Real done?
I think considering everything that happened last season, Madrid have done quite well. We had a great transfer window, yeah, but we needed more reinforcements in the midfield. There was a lot of reports about Zidane wanting Paul Pogba at the club, but he couldn't get it, and later on, we just made do with first with Luka Modric, Casemiro, and Toni Kroos, and then later on with the addition of Fede Valverde. So for this season, I think we have done quite well, considering that this is a transition season. But obviously, I expect more from the club.
Yeah, Prabuddha.
I think in La Liga, the yardstick to measure how good Real Madrid has always been Barcelona's performances and vice versa. And I think the proper way to go about this would be by comparing us with Barcelona. And despite it is a transition season, like Nithanth said, and we've performed very, very well. There's if you look quite deeply into our performances and our numbers, we've actually been better than Barcelona in every regard. We have the best defense in Europe. Everybody knows that. We've conceded only 19 goals, and our attack, we take the third most shots per game in Europe. I think around 16, which is 4 more than Barcelona, who take 12. And our XG suggests that we should have scored 53 goals, and Barcelona's XG suggests that they should have scored 52. But we take 4 more shots per game, but we only have 1 more goal that should have been. But here comes the problem for our performances this season. It's of all the big teams in Europe, I think we're the only one who've underperformed our XG apart from Atletico Madrid. We've actually scored 6 less goals than we've been supposed to score by the numbers. And I think that's the main reason we aren't first in Spain right now, because our primary goal threat Benzema, he's been underperforming a lot. He's underperformed his own XG by 3. And on the other hand, Barcelona have overperformed their XG by around 11, which is insane. And we all know who that's down to. And because of the performance of one guy and him constantly overperforming his XG, we're lagging behind Barcelona. And despite being better in defense, despite being better at creating chances, at controlling the midfield, we're still behind Barcelona, and that's all down to our malfunctioning attack.
I think that's down to the drop in form as compared to the start of the season, especially with Karim Benzema. I mean, he scored a lot of goals the first 6 months of the season, and ever since the start of the new year, he has just dropped off. And that's why we are not in the first position where we should be, where we rightfully should be. And again, it's not feasible for a club like Real Madrid to just depend on one man. I think there should have been other players who stepped up in the attack. We have been depending on 19-year-old Vinicius and an 18-year-old Rodrigo Goes. which is just not okay for a club as big as Real Madrid.
Yeah, and I also think the injury to Hazard has hurted Real Madrid in many ways. He's a really good dribbler, really good creator, and he's won 3 penalties for Real Madrid this season. So I think when Hazard comes back, I think he'll add an extra dimension to Madrid's attack, which has largely been reliant on Karim Benzema to date. That's it.
Hazard's only had 10 appearances in the league and a total of 751 minutes. And most of those minutes have been while he's either recovering from an injury or at the beginning of the season where he was just kind of bedding in. So, like, we've never really had Hazard at full flow for us. We've never really experienced the Hazard this season. And he was supposed to be the leader of our attack. And without that, we've suffered a lot, like Ojosdai said.
That too, and Asensio too. The lack of Asensio, and there's no right wing option for us. There's no set right wing option for us. Gareth Bale hasn't been playing well for over 2 years now, and we have had to make do with Lucas Vazquez. With no disrespect to him, he's an excellent squad player, but he can't be the starting right winger for Real Madrid. And again, a 19-year-old. 18-year-old Rodrigo Goes doesn't cut it.
One thing that Real Madrid have not been the best team going forward, as we have seen them over the years, but I think Real Madrid have one of the best defense across Europe with only 19 goals conceded. I think it's the best. I don't know about exactly if it's the best or not, but who do you think is mostly responsible for this? Because as we know, Real Madrid is a kind of a attacking team, but now this season they've been mostly known for the defenses. So what is the main reason or the transition that we have seen from Zidane in the past few years, that he's more shifted from an attacking team to a more defensively stable team? So what do you think is the main reason behind the stability at the back?
Nithanth, you want to take this?
Yeah, I think one of the huge reasons, there are a couple of reasons for that. One of the huge reasons this season has been the form of Casemiro. He has been unbelievable this season, considering how he played last season. The way he has performed, I think he's the best DM in the world right now. There's no one better. He had an tendency to go forward, play as a 10 occasionally under Zidane. But this season he hasn't done that. He has been great. He sits back, provides cover for Ramos and Varane, and that combined with the fact that for most of the games this seasons we have had Ferland Mendy as a left back, and him joining the left back position, it helps Sergio Ramos a lot. When Marcelo is playing, the huge problem happens is that Ramos has to cover a lot for him. But with Mendy, he doesn't have that issue. So I think that those two are the main reasons that we have been so good defensively.
I also think the addition of Fede Valverde into Real Madrid's midfield has given them an extra combative edge, because I think he compensates for the lack of pace in Real Madrid's midfield, because Kroos isn't as fast and Modric is also aging slowly.
Yeah, I think Ferland Mendy's defensive stats have been like world class this season. Like, I think it's the best defensive stat for a fullback across Europe this season in terms of defensive stats.
For left backs,
the best left back in the Liga, and I think top 3 left back in the world as well.
Like Mendy, like Nithanth said about Mendy's defensive positioning. Another is like Zidane he's moved away from his tactic of letting Casemiro roam free up forward. Like, initially he started to do this because Casemiro was a liability while building up, so he used to allow Casemiro to go forward so he wouldn't be involved in the build-up play and wouldn't be pressed. But this season he's asked Casemiro to stay back, and as a result we've always had a constant shield in front of our defense. So like that's the main reason Casemiro has been so good this season. That plus I think this is finally the season in which Varane has taken over from Ramos as the best centre back in our back four, and like regular watchers of Real Madrid will know that Varane has been much better than than Ramos this season. He's improved physically a lot. He's kind of stepped up as our leading center back this season, and Ramos hasn't declined that massively. So we've had an overall improvement in the performances of our center backs.
Yeah, I think we should shift to Barca now, and we have a Barca fan in our panel, thankfully, so that won't be a problem. So the first thing for Barca is, how is the transition from Ernesto Valverde, who was sacked mid-season? How's the transition from Valverde's style of play to Setien's style of play, and what has improved, or like even after that coaching change, Barca have not been that exceptional. So what's the problem behind that, and what changes have been done after Setien's introduction?
So first of all, I feel like when we went from Ernesto Valverde to Quique Setien, there haven't been any bad things that have happened. I think it's only the positives we can look at, although they're not that exceptional. So the main problem under Ernesto Valverde was our defending shape, our attacking shape. Like any kind of shit, we would go really haywire at any point in the game, and we would often usually result in route one football being played from Marc-Andre ter Stegen to Messi, and then Messi somehow scoring a goal. But under Setien, Barca have actually played a certain style of football that is heavily possession based, and although it does actually, I think there is a lot of possession, and although there may not be much penetration, I think Barca have had a set play, and I think the defensive structure as well as the attacking structure of Barca has been much better under Setien, and I think that these drastic changes are not seen because Setien needs a certain type of players in his team for his tactics to work, and I think Barca were not able to do much business on the January transfer window. So I think Setien can prove himself again next season.
Yeah.
I think the main.
Yeah, I think one of the primary issues with Barcelona this season and under Setien has been that, like we know from his Betis days, Setien has always liked to employ a team that presses high, wins the ball back high, and then kind of maintains possession. And he demands a lot from his players, but Barcelona more or less have two players who refuse to do any sort of defensive work as well. And one's Messi, but Messi has kind of like earned that. But the other is a player that both Rishav and me and I are guilty of overrating quite a bit. It's Arthur Melo, because he's one of the best midfield prospects around. I admit that, but he basically does absolutely no defending at all. And given his role in the center of midfield, that's like a real big problem for Barcelona. And without proper contribution from those two, or from at least Arthur on the defensive side of things, I don't think Setien can truly get his ideas through to the team and truly implement what style he wants on the pitch.
I think, Prabuddha is right, but I think another player that we could add to that is Sergio Busquets, because usually Setien would employ a high press with most of his players in Betis, but Busquets, maybe due to his age or just due to his style, he does not really contribute to the pressing. So I think, I feel like from next season onwards, this could be really controversial, but I feel like Busquets should be actually dropped and De Jong should be played in his position, and maybe we get a better sense.
And one thing that Setien also told that Coutinho would fit in this Barca team. So where do you think Coutinho would fit in this current Barca lineup?
I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, because we know about his form in Barcelona. That he's not liked by most of the Barca fans. So where do you think he'll end up? So,
I think Coutinho can obviously prove himself much better than his time under Valverde, because in his time under Valverde, he was being played massively out of position at the wing. And under Setien, maybe Setien is most probably, if he does include in his plans, he's going to play at the middle of the park, because Coutinho obviously operates better centrally. But I personally don't think that Coutinho is really going to make much of a difference, unlike any other normal sentiment that we could buy, because Coutinho is much more of an attacking player, and I feel like I think it's going to be the same with the Arsenal situation, because Coutinho is not going to defend, and that's where the main problem lies in midfield, and Coutinho doesn't really I don't think it's going to work because Messi is going to drop down to the midfield and he's going to lead the attack either way. So I don't think Coutinho is really going to fit.
Oh, I think I disagree with your opinion because since Setien like mostly deploys a 3-5 formation in attack, and Coutinho's favorite position is the left side of midfield, mostly in the left half space. And right now in the left half space, Griezmann mostly operates in the final third of the left half space, and he's not been performing well in that Barcelona system. But if you put Coutinho forward in a front five in the left half space, I think Coutinho can do really well in that position.
But the problem with that is like under in Setien's teams, he's always had one of those the players right behind the strikers operate kind of like a 10, so they have quite a lot of freedom to actually move into that area, and Coutinho naturally tends to move into the central area as well. And the 10 is obviously going to be Messi, and because of Messi's tendencies to stay in that area, I don't think him and Coutinho are going to be compatible under Setien.
Yeah, I just thought like.
And I also feel like usually Jordi Alba also he occupies pretty much the left flank most of the times, and Barca don't always play with a three at the back formation with Setien. So there will always be some kind of reverting in the system. So I don't feel like Coutinho is really going to make much of a difference for Setien.
Yeah, no. When I meant the 3-5 formation, I meant it as an attacking shape. Yeah, even though Barca like play 4-3-3 on paper, it's Setien mostly likes to deploy the 3-5 system during attacks. That's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, I see. But Setien also he like usually sometimes plays with the 4-3-3 itself, and he defends in a 4-4-2. So I think I think Coutinho is a bit of a hassle in that.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think even Griezmann and Messi and Coutinho, all these three kind of try to occupy the same position on the field. So they already have Griezmann, they already have Messi. I just don't see how Coutinho could fit.
Yeah.
So what are the areas that Barca need to address in the transfer window? Or who are the players that will improve this Barcelona team?
So I feel like the main area is obviously the fullbacks because Barcelona's fullbacks are I don't want to say dreadful, but it is quite weak relatively.
They're close to dreadful.
But I feel like Barcelona should really improve on the fullback position. I think like Semedo has improved slightly since last season, but he's been pretty good under Setien, to be honest. But I don't think like Semedo is the right man for the club right now. And I was actually hoping that we would get the Cancelo deal done with Man City because there was some rumor popping up, but I don't think that's possible now. So the main obviously area is the left back position because Jordi Alba is actually he does not defend at all and he's very predictable in attack. So he doesn't really contribute to the team much, especially since the second half of last season. And the other area is definitely the wing, where Ansu Fati operates. Because the main problem in Barcelona's attack right now is that we don't have enough directness or enough width. Because Ansu Fati, although he does provide some kind of width, there is no directness in attack. It's always this heavy possession-based football, and when we need to score a goal, there is no directness in the team. So I feel like maybe we could work with Dembele, but if Dembele does not manage to stay fit next season, then I think we should sell him.
Yeah, I think the main problem with Barca is that they average a lot of position. That's I think 65 to 70% possession per game, but they have absolutely no verticality or ball progression from midfield. And also the left wing position, like Rishabh said, Griezmann isn't an out and out winger. And since Messi has been playing as a false nine under Setien in the last weeks, he's been able to operate as an inside forward. But Suarez is back. Messi will move to the right wing, and Griezmann will go into the left wing, and problems will arise again. So I think it's time to discuss about Atleti.
I was talking about the Barcelona youngsters that you were talking about the other day. That there are few notable youngsters that might come up through the ranks, and then so you can mention some notable ones.
I would like to add to that question. I would like to add to that question. Like from the Barcelona youngsters. Like the main one who's been a star this season is Ansu Fati. What are your thoughts on Ansu Fati?
You're gonna get me into a problem. So like first 2000 question. So I'm just gonna name them. I'm not gonna really explain. I think Ricky Puig is gonna be a great player from our ranks. I think Oriel Busquets, hopefully if he returns from the loan from SC20. There's also this left back actually, which I have been following since I think past few months. His name is Sergio Akiyama, and he's been really good. I think he could be a better, hopefully he can replace Jordi Alba. And yeah, I think Inaki Pena can also be a future replacement. Mark, interesting. And answering this question, I feel Ansu Fati is a decent player for his age, but I don't really think he should be a starter for the team, and I actually don't really like his style of play. I think Fati really lacks directness, although he has shown moments of brilliantness, and but I feel like Fati is not really direct for the team.
Yeah, so I think we should move on from Barca now and then switch to Atletico. And I think one thing to address in the Atletico situation is the transfer decisions they've made in the past 2 seasons. So, like, what do you think about the recent transfers that they've done?
I have some thoughts on it. I think first of all, there's a thought process that Atletico is still a small team. They are still underdogs. They are not. They have the money now. They try to play as the underdogs, but they clearly aren't. They just defeated Liverpool in the round of 16. Regarding the transfers, they just spent 120 million on João Felix. Uh, João Felix played just 6 months in the top tier, and they decided to spend 120 million that they got from the Griezmann sale uh, on a youngster, on an 18-year-old, and that's quite risky. I don't think that's worth it, and it's in line with what other decisions they have made. I don't think they have made uh, a good transfer decisions. They had they bought Lorente for 40 million. And he hasn't played much. Then they sold Carrasco to a Chinese club and then brought him back this January. So I think they need to step up their transfer attempts. They haven't done that well. There are even more examples. I think Thomas Lemma. Uh, he's a good player. He should be playing more, but he hasn't played. I think he has played only around 800 minutes this season in La Liga, and that I think they should be buying more players that are suited to their style instead of just spending every amount on just players that don't suit them.
Yeah, I think the main thing about Atletico this season has been the a lack of goals, and then they've totally underperformed their XG this season by around 10 goals. So 10 goals is a lot of goals to underperform their goals. So if they had scored 10 goals according to the XG, they would have been the fourth highest scoring team in La Liga. That's a major improvement from where they are right now. So that's one thing. And I think the three strikers they have, Morata, João Felix, and Diego Costa. I think Morata has around 7 goals, and then Diego Costa and João Felix both have, I think, 2. And João Felix had an XG of around 4, and he's scoring only 2, which shows he's underperforming his XG. And one thing is Atletico's chances created and their quality of shots have actually increased this season. So that means that the main problem they have is their clinicality. They've actually been better defensively this season than last season. They have an XG against of only 14.42. So that's pretty recent. And their defense is good, their like chances creation is good, their quality of shots is good. The only problem they have right now is that the strikers just aren't scoring more goals. So I think one solution can be like using their fullbacks more during build up, because even though Trippier has around 3 assists and Lodi has I think 1 goal and 1 assist, they aren't using their fullbacks that much during build up. They're not participating in attacking duels that much. And Lodi, I think, is one of the more decent transfers Atletico did this season. They replaced Felipe Luis like really well. So I think Simeone should alter his tactics in some way. And plus, he could buy a striker, but that would be a more of a financial burden. Plus, it would not look good in the transfer window, considering they've just bought Morata for 55 million and then they've bought João Felix for 120 million. So adding another striker would be like they that would be a problem among the fans and their critics. So I think Simeone should work on his tactics more than like going for another striker again.
I think Atleti spending 60 million pounds on an aging and perpetually injured Diego Costa was one of the worst deals of the last 5 years, and he's been absolutely horrible since he's returned to Atleti Madrid. Like to properly gauge how bad Diego Costa has been, like this season he's at around 1.1 shots per 90, and like to properly gauge that, like Joe Linton, who's been one of the worst strikers in the Premier League, has around 2. So that's how Diego Costa has been bad. Diego Costa has been, and like Ishanda said, like one of their problems is that they they don't use their fullbacks at all in attack, and they're losing 2 potential very dangerous players from the wings. And related to that problem is that while building from their own half, not involved in chance creation or build up, like Ishandai said, Trippier is their primary ball progressor. So, and when the player who's progressing the ball the most times for you is your right back, that's also a sign of the systemic problems in the squad, because for 90% of the teams, that's always the midfielders, and it's only in the teams who have problems while controlling possession and while progressing the ball forward. It's like weird positions such as wingers, for Chelsea last season it was Hazard, and for Atletico this season it's Trippier, and like that thing just shouldn't be happening, and that's an indication of the problems that are going on in the Athletic team this season.
I'd like to add something on what Ishan and Prabuddha said. Atletico play a very pragmatic 4-4-2, and one thing you can notice is that the widest players of the midfield four aren't wingers, but they are midfielders instead. This is because deploying midfielders as the widest players in a midfield four allows them to drop back quickly in situations of defensive transitions, but it adds a responsibility to the fullbacks to supplement the attackers. And I don't think Trippier or Lodi are on the level of Trent or Hakimi or Davies. And I don't think Atleti have really great wingers in their racks too. I think Thomas Lemar isn't as good as what he used to be. And Angel Correa is also not good.
Yeah, I think Atletico's use of Thomas Partey and Saul in a double pivot, that caused, even though that provided some sort of defensive solidarity because Partey is a more natural defensive midfielder, that compromised their attacking chances. And when they played a double pivot of Saul and Koke, that's actually been better for their chance creation and attacks. So if Atletico, basically Simeone, decides to take a bit of risk playing with Koke and Saul, that would obviously compromise some sort of defensive solidarity for them, but that would be helpful for them in the offensive phase, because right now their main problem is that they need to create more chances and score more goals. So I think Simeone should really prioritize on the attacking front right now, because defensively he's one of the best defensive coaches there is in Europe right now, and that I don't think that needs any mentioning. But right now his team's main focus should be scoring goals, because in the previous seasons, I think Griezmann was covering a lot of holes for them attacking wise, because Griezmann was constantly overperforming his XG. The stats show that. And then I think that whole left back Griezmann needs a not only a player for player replacement, but a replacement tactics wise too.
I think that's the problem that they did this season. They, like I said, they used the entire Griezmann money to just buy Joao Felix, and that's exactly what has gone wrong for them. It's like Ishan said, they should have gone for a couple of players maybe that could have systematically replaced Griezmann instead of just going for a player replacement.
They also wasted their money on Thomas Lemar. I think.
Yeah.
60
Thomas
million.
Lemar
he's been really
I
bad
think
since
he
he
has
joined.
wasted.
Lemar has been really underwhelming. I've seen most of all the athletic games that I've seen. Lemar has been the worst player.
But for me, I think Vitolo has been good this season. Vitolo, I think.
Yeah, Pitolo has been good, but like some of their coming back to transfer decisions, they brought back Carrasco again from China after selling him to China a few years back, and then they bought Versalgo again after selling him to Inter a few years back. So like you can see what Simeone is trying to do or what Simeone is trying to build towards, because he's selling players and then buying them back, and then like you can see a specific plan for them going forward, and that's pretty worrying for a team like Atletico, who has to build a new team. Yeah, this part, because most of their previous players are aging or they've been transitioned out, like the players like Gabby and then Godin and even Savage, and then not Jimenez, Juan Fran. Like there are a lot of players that were going out, and then they need to make the right decision so that the team they build now will last for the long run. And I think transfer decisions in such a phase is very crucial, because if it goes wrong, Manchester United can happen. And as a Manchester United fan, I know when your team can't transition into a better side, things can go awfully wrong. And that's what happened to us after Fergie left. So I think Atletico should handle this transition with care, because things can go really wrong after a while.
It's even more surprising when you consider that they are under Diego Simeone, who has a set system at place, and still they are still struggling to replace their players. I mean, if it was a club like Real Madrid who constantly changes their coach, and the coach really doesn't have much of a say in the transfers. But Simeone has a say in the transfers. He's the one who's leading the system, the project. And still they are ending up making a lot of wrong decision in transfers. That's really surprising for me.
Yeah.
Like even some of the transfers, like Thomas Lemar, like it never really seemed like they wanted to be there. Like Lemar was always set for a move to Arsenal, and then because of the 92 million pound fee, he couldn't go, and then he kind of like settled for Atletico. And even for Hermoso, he really hoped that Real Madrid would exert their buyback clause on him, but Real Madrid never did that. And Llorente also, he wanted to stay and prove himself at Madrid, but Zidane didn't like him. So it's like they're picking up players who never really wanted to join Atletico, and then trying to get such players to kind of believe in the system and perform at their highest possible levels is going to be difficult for any coach.
Yeah, even Hector Herrera, like he is a good player, but he's past his prime, and he's I think 29 or something. And I remember Hector Herrera was a Ferguson transfer target. So now Atletico just bought him in this transfer window, like uh, a player that is, I think, past his prime, even though he's a very energetic midfielder. So I think, yeah, that's the decision. And even Lemar was like already showing signs of decline on his second uh, full season in Monaco. That's why his transfer price reduced so drastically, because when Arsenal were targeting him, his price was around 90 million, and then he performed so badly in his second season with Monaco that Atletico still paid 60 million for him. So that just shows how bad Atletico are handling the transfer window.
Now moving on from Atleti, so let's discuss about the real breakthrough La Liga team of the season, the one that's on everybody's lips, Real Sociedad. So
Yeah,
would
Real
anybody like to
Sociedad.
start?
Real Sociedad are currently fourth in the table, and they are playing a good brand of attacking football. And they mostly start with the formation of 4-3-3, but they can always change it to 4-2-3-1 when Odegaard plays as a number 10. And some key facts about Martin Odegaard, who is a Real Madrid player, but the key stats about Martin Odegaard are he's the most creative player in their team, but with the most key passes, more than Lionel Messi. And then one stats about is not only about his attacking game, but he's best defensively as well. And in the opposition half, he has the most. I think Ishan, what was the stat about? Most
Yeah, no,
number of
Odegaard has like
recoveries.
450
Yeah,
recoveries per game, and half of them are in the
yeah.
opposition half. Like it shows how active he is during pressing.
And I think he's well partnered by Mikel Merino in midfield as well. And they are blessed with some of the few very good players up front, uh, like Prabuddha will mention, like Isaac and William Jose. I think they are one of the best people going up front because they have a choice of going with one of those strikers. And then they also have Mikel Oyarzabal in midfield as well. And then always they have option of Hernani Januzaj, who Ishan knows better than all of us because he played for Manchester United. So I think they have a good mix of players going forward and both defensively, and they are the best team going forward among the teams that are teams that are competing for the top four, like Sevilla and Getafe. So they are better than them in terms of attack. So I think it's a good brand of football that they're playing at the moment, and they're a good team to watch in the top four.
Sociedad actually has the third highest goal scored in the league after Madrid and and so I think I think it mainly contributes. I think it is mainly contributed by Odegaard and Orizabal and Porto, and I think it's been really good going forward.
I think yeah, was
Like Susan, I said, Odegaard is actually he's a very voracious presser, and but like one thing, like we all know how good Odegaard is, and like he scored 7 times, assisted 8 times. He completes the fourth most dribbles in La Liga. But one very underrated aspect of Sociedad that Susan I already touched upon is Mikel Merino. So like one key aspect of Merino is that we can see through Odegaard's numbers, like he used to press 23 times last season per game for Vitesse, and this season it's dropped down to 15 because that's because a lot of the defensive burden for him has been taken up by Merino, and Merino provides this solid base. He's clearly been the second best defensive midfielder in La Liga this season after only Casemiro. He's performed better than Busquets. He's performed better than like the usual suspects for the candidates for the moniker of best DM in La Liga. And without Merino, that attack doesn't thrive, in my opinion. And uh, because of how solid Merino is, it gives Oyarzabal, Porto, Isaac, and Odegaard the license to go forward and do their thing.
And I think Sociedad have been like spoiled with two really great strikers. And then the thing about those two, the two I'm talking about, William Jose and Alexander Isak, they have similar number of goal scoring counts, like 9 and 7, and they're also overperforming their XG by similar amounts. So that means that they have a similar range of clinicality. So Sociedad can rotate between both of them without undermining their quality during attacks. That's one thing that not a lot of teams have, because mostly teams have one striker that's really great and the second choice is not on that level. But Sociedad have two strikers very much in a similar level, and they can rotate without undermining quality.
And I think a lot of the credit has to be given to the coach as well, Emmanuel Aguasi. I really don't know how to pronounce his name, but like he's taken those players and then he's given them a system in which they can really strut their stuff, in which they can really show how good they are. And they play a style a bit similar to Setien's Betis, but they aren't like as structured. They've got a lot more emphasis on individual brilliance.
Yeah, I think since we are talking about Sociedad, I think I remember this one crazy match that we played against Sociedad where Odegaard actually outperformed Messi the whole game. So that was quite interesting.
Yeah, I watched that game.
A sign of things to come.
Yeah, great sight for us.
Yeah, I think Odegaard has been like this season's best attacking midfielder in La Liga if we consider Messi as a false nine, which he's been playing in that position a lot this season. I think Odegaard has been undoubtedly the best attacking midfielder in La Liga this season.
Even in that Copa del Rey tie in which they beat us 5-4, Odegaard was like, he was phenomenal. He like literally tore our defense apart, him and Isak.
His footballing IQ.
The thing about Odegaard is that he is really versatile as well. He can play as a central midfielder, offering ball control. He can play as a 10 and also as a winger. I think his dribbling is pretty underrated. I think Real Madrid have really acquired a gem.
Yeah.
We kept a lot of patience with him. That was
as far as I know, he came into the scene when he was 14, I think, and after
15.
Yeah, 14, 15, yeah. He was 15 when he came into the scene.
I think he had a similar salary to De Gea back then, because I remember when Real Madrid bought Odegaard, De Gea had a similar salary with.
Yeah, we paid Odegaard 80k a week just to get him while he was 15, and then
I think
Ancelotti actually said
75k back then.
Ancelotti actually said he was a publicity stunt, but it's been proven to be untrue now. And one of the best, one of the best things about Odegaard, like for Real Madrid fans, is that Perez and Zidane have come out repeatedly and said that Odegaard is the future of our team. Odegaard will be the future of Real Madrid. So, like, that's a sign that they've actually invested a lot into him, and then that they're hoping that he's gonna lead our next great team.
Yeah, I think after Neymar, the most hyped teenager of our generation, I think not there, but like Susan and Ozas, like our generation, that had been Odegaard, because I don't remember like that level of hype on any youngster after Neymar.
Finally after a decade.
Neymar, Odegaard, who else? Alan Halilovic.
Oh yeah,
I was trying to remember his name.
I actually had an argument with the Real Madrid fan 4 years back about why Halilovic is better than Odegaard.
You must regret it now.
I think Halilovic is still contracted to AC Milan.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Was Halilovic? No idea.
I think so. I should check, but I think he's still contracted. Yeah, I think we should move on from Sociedad now. So, should we go for Sevilla now?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sevilla, they're third in the table, and they are the team with the third highest average possession after Real and Barca. And I think Ever Banega has been their standard performer this season. He averages 7.7 long balls per game. That's more than Toni Kroos. And I think he's also their best dribbler, second best dribbler. And he also averages 2 key passes per game. That's highest for his team. Similarly, Ocampos has been scoring a lot of goals lately. I think he scored 10 goals. Yeah, I think Sevilla are in a run.
Rishav?
So, since one of the most important players of Sevilla is Jesus Navas, I was wondering if how much he contributes to the defensive duties of the team, because Sevilla have a relatively okayish backline. So this is the question.
Rishav, you also know about Munir. I think he's still in Sevilla. Munir.
On the topic of Sevilla fullbacks, like Jesus Navas has been excellent, but he hasn't been the standout fullback for Sevilla. It's been our loanee Sergio Reguilon, and in terms of attacking statistics, Reguilon is actually the best fullback in La Liga, and in terms of defensive statistics, he's the second best fullback in La Liga after only Forlan Mondi. So he's actually been really integral to their game. And like one unique aspect of how Lopetegui uses him is that he actually makes Reguilon underlap instead of overlap like 99% of fullbacks do. And then that's a weapon they've used on different occasions, and it kind of really messes up with their opponent's defensive shape, because nobody really expects a fullback to underlap.
And I think one problem with Sevilla has been their midfield, because they have a lot of players that are of like similar characteristics, and they're not that great defensively. Like if you since Lopetegui plays with a 4-3-3, he mostly likes to play a deep lying playmaker in the most the number 6 position. So if you play a player like Ever Banega there, you're compromised defensively because you don't he's not the most physical player to win defensive duels. So I think that is compromised a lot for Sevilla
But
this season
there
defensively.
is there is an interesting stat about Ever Banega that he has more passes into the final third. That is 184, and it is one ahead of Tony Cruz as well.
Yeah, no, I'm not questioning him in the attacking sense, because like we know Ever Banega is like one of the best deep lying playmakers there is right now, and but like defensively playing such a short statured player in that position, the number 6 position, it really exposes your team to a lot of counterattacks. So I think that's been a problem for Sevilla this season. Mostly the last time I watched Sevilla was, I think, in a Europa League tie against CFR Cluj, where they really struggled with their transitions, because Ever Banega was constantly exposed to like physical players, which he couldn't cope with really well.
I think Sevilla were best defensively when they had Steven Nzonzi.
Yeah,
Steven Nzonzi
I
was the
agree.
best player, I think.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Ishan there. I think playing Banega as a deep line playmaker is pretty much a gamble, because most of Sevilla's attack usually comes from the fullbacks as well. And even the Banega is really good going up front. I also, since I used to watch Argentina a lot, so Banega is not really your ideal player for the defensive duties.
There is one specific player that Liverpool are linked up with, is the Sevilla centre back Diego Carlos. And I haven't been following that much the Sevilla games, but Liverpool are keeping an eye on the centre back Diego Carlos. But people are questioning the target that Liverpool is doing at the moment, because they are believing that Joe Gomez and Matip can do the job, but they are going after Diego Carlos as well. Moses, do you know anything about this rumor?
This is the first time I am hearing this Diego Carlos story.
Okay.
The False Nine podcast lacks information for the first time in history.
I think after Sevilla, another team that has been really good in La Liga has been Getafe. They beat Ajax in the Europa League. They are currently fifth, I think, in the league.
No, I think
they're fifth.
They're fifth
Yeah.
in the league.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So like they are an underrated team. I mean, they have a great pressing scheme. They are really good at pressing. I mean, they look like a low block team who plays through a low block. But Ishan, I think you have a stat related to their pressing, right?
Yeah. Getafe have like the most their PPDA is the highest in La Liga. It's around 7.09, which shows just how aggressively they press. PPDA essentially means passes per defensive action, and that means the amount of passes the team is allowing to the opposition. So the lower it is, the more higher, the more intensive the press is. So 7.09 is a really great PPDA, and it's even better than like the most aggressively pressing sides in Europe, like Leverkusen and Bayern Munich. So that's really an achievement for a team like Getafe. And I think this season has been a revelation for Bordalas as a coach, because his 4-4-2 style with like average players, they've clearly outperformed their expectations this season. And as I've said, he likes the 4-4-2 system, and his strikers, Mata and I think Molina, they're 37 and 31 years old. So they're relying on players that are supposed to be past their prime or around their the fringes of their prime. So and they also have a Barcelona loanee, Cucurella, who's very active during the when Getafe press. And one thing, as Nithanth mentioned, they seem like a low block team, but like their stats show that they have very low possession, but they're actually not a low block team. They do sit in a low block once the team has played through their counter press, but their main priority is always aggressively counter pressing the opposition and then sitting in a low block. And once they sit in a low block, it's really hard to take a shot against them. And one example is when they defeated Valencia this season. Valencia had an XG of around 0.07, and they had 0 shots on goal. That just shows how well they are defensively. And Getafe, like, they like to play narrow in defense and narrow in attack. That allows them more players around the ball when they lose a ball or when during defensive phases. So that's, I think, they're one of the most unique teams in Europe. They're relying on route one football. They play long balls. They don't like to hold the ball that much. They don't like to build up from the back and stuff. They don't like to put 20 to 23 passes per moves and then create one chance. They like to play direct football, route one football, and I think that's pretty unique in this time, because most of the teams are they stick to playing out from the back and then like making attacking moves, very patient attacking moves. I think this side is pretty unique.
Yeah, I also agree with both of Nithanth and Ishan. And just like Ishan, they said, Getafe love to defend narrowly and they also attack narrowly. And I think what that does is that it provides a very tight, it provides much less space for other teams to use, and that has been especially leverage for Getafe while playing against teams like Real Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia, and Ajax, who are really require some space for their game plan to flow. And even against Barcelona could only beat Getafe due to individual brilliance of Lionel Messi. And Getafe were, I think it was that game that I realized that Getafe are seriously one of the best defending sides in Europe, and I think Bordalas has implemented the style really well.
Yeah, another interesting stat about them is that they have the most set piece goals after Barcelona. And Barcelona to score that many goals is Messi, because he scored so many free kicks. But after that, Getafe have scored the most amount of set piece goals in La Liga.
Aniel Rodriguez has, I think, he takes on 10 minutes to score a goal, and he's just surpassed by Lionel Messi. And Messi takes around 99 minutes for a goal. Yeah. So I think that is one stat.
I think he's been the super sub for Getafe this season.
Yeah.
Does anyone have anything to add?
I think PG said Getafe plays like a prime Mourinho team, I think. How? Yeah, PG, go on.
Yeah, like they're like a Mourinho team, but with lesser players, not like a prime Mourinho team, but the Mourinho team that he had, like our Mourinho team, the Real Madrid Mourinho team. Like they played a pretty high press. Like Getafe pressed way more than we used to do, but the facets of the game are similar, because if the opposition team manages to beat the press, they don't continue with their counter press like Liverpool or Gladbach do. They actually fall back into a very basic 4-4-2 system to maintain a deep block and try to spring a counterattack from that base. And that's exactly what our Mourinho team did. Like if the first two lines of pressure were dealt with easily by the opposition, then the go-to method was to revert back to defensive, like a deep defensive block. And that's pretty much what Getafe do this season.
Does anyone have anything to add?
Ben, welcome.
Yeah, is it done? So yeah, I think our podcast for today has concluded. Firstly, I'd like to thank Nithanth for joining us for today's panel. Thank you very much for taking your time. And it was a lot of fun.
Thank you for inviting me.
Discussing things with you.
Person-to-person interaction we've had with Nithanth.
Yeah. This is the first time we've like talked and not not on text. So
I was actually wondering how his voice would be like, and it's just as I imagined.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
It's
And
great
then-
to be part of this, man.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like the first time I've ever appeared in a podcast, so I was a bit nervous, but I think it's gone well.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I think we should conclude this podcast. Thank you to Rishav and Prabuddha for joining us, and yeah, subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And, yeah, Prabuddha, for you.
हामीलाई त पर्मानेन्ट मेम्बरै बनाइदियो हुन्छ
False 11, False 9 plus 2 podcast.
Okay, so
Didn't understand a thing.
Don't speak in Nepali. For
sorry.
international viewers.
yeah,
Yeah.
Don't ruin the podcast.
I said at this point they can make Rishav and me permanent members of the podcast.
I think Nithanth also knows 2 words in Nepali that I taught him way back.
Yeah. Kati Bakira.
Bukira.
Bukira, sorry.
okay. So with that note, we conclude our Kati Bukira podcast because the audience might say Kati Bukira after this. So yeah,
Yeah.
goodbye.